Bryce Young and Tet were two of the biggest winners coming out of Week 11. We'll tell you if you can trust the young Panther stars next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is the Fantasy Football Hall of Famer, Michael Fabiano. And on today's show, we're taking a look at the biggest winners and losers coming out of Week 11. And Fabs, let's start with the Panthers because Bryce Young just set a franchise record for passing yards. Tetairoa McMillan had a huge day. Are we buying these two guys as fantasy, big time fantasy stars moving forward?
I mean, Tet, I can, confidently say yes. Bryce Young, probably not, because just consistency. And that's been a theme for this season is lack of consistency from a lot of players. And we're going to talk about that throughout the program. But, 448 and 3 touchdowns. He had almost 32 fantasy points. Anyone see that coming? No, nobody raising their hands. No, it's the first time he has scored more than 10.5 points in his last 4 starts. And he's averaging just 12.9 points per game. So maybe you sell high on him in Dynasty right now because he's coming off of such a big game. The Panthers are doing well. I mean, they're a team with a winning record right now, which is, something that no one would have predicted. But Bryce Young is just not a guy that I feel like is going to, start taking steps to becoming a startable quarterback on a regular basis. Now, in terms of Tet, this one, once again, I mean, if you watched the show last week, I didn't love McMillan this week against Atlanta. And Atlanta's defense is insane. Like, they're either really good or they are just brutal. Last time he played him, he had 7.8 points. So for him to go off and have 8 catches for 132 touchdowns and 33 fantasy points was not in my wheelhouse. I didn't think that was going to happen. If you started him, and I did because I needed to, then congrats. That helped you potentially win a matchup this week. But I think McMillan's got what it takes, and I've said this ever since he came out of college, has got what it takes to be an alpha in the NFL. And we've seen flashes of that this season, and including this game against Atlanta, where he had his best game statistically in his rookie season.
And a big reason why he had more success this time around against Atlanta is they just put him in the slot more, and it made it so A.J. Terrell couldn't follow him into the slot. Lo and behold, he has a monster game. It's funny watching Tet and Drake London play, against each other because they're almost like doppelgangers of one another. And I think you could see like what Tet might be able to become from like a long-term dynasty asset. But this is just, I mean, he's been really good this year. I don't think we've talked about it enough how good he's been. And in fact, over the last 2 months, he's been much better than Emeka Egbuka, who was kind of the hot guy in the first 2 months of the year. I love what we've seen from Tet lately.
Yeah, me too. And he's had his peaks and his valleys. I mean, going into this game, he had been held to 11 or fewer points in 3 of his 4 previous contests, but still, like, he's got that potential to put up the big total. And this was again, you mentioned moving him into the slot, getting him away from Terrell, which is kind of why I didn't love him, this week. Carolina is getting, let's put it this way, the offense and the way things are being run, much better. This season. They've got more talent. They really hit a home run with Rico Dowdle, who almost scored a touchdown for us. He stepped just out of bounds. I mean, I was so, I'm like, oh man, he had a decent game as a pass catcher on the ground. It wasn't great, but Carolina has now got some assets for us in fantasy, and we haven't really been able to see that in a while or say that in a while. So exciting things going on there for Tet McMillan. I would say this. I don't know how long Bryce Young is for the starting job. I mean, obviously he's going to keep it this year, but if we're talking about dynasty, I kind of think he might be holding Carolina back from going to that next level offensively, because I just don't think that he's a terribly great quarterback, and certainly not a guy who you thought you were getting when you drafted #1 overall just a few years ago.
Yes, I agree with you, but there's still a massive drop off when he goes out of the game and Andy Dalton comes in for
No,
him.
I'm not right. I'm not saying to replace him with Andy Dalton, but I'm saying, maybe
I
you
know
need
what
to
you
think
mean.
about going in a different direction at some point
Yes.
in the next year or two.
I just wonder with a lot of these teams, using, Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, maybe we'll see teams be more patient with highly drafted quarterbacks like Bryce Young. But let's talk about another player. I want to talk about Kenneth Walker, who has been someone who we've talked about a lot on this show over the last couple of months, because what's been the thing that we've said, Babs, is he's looked really good. Whenever he's gotten touches, he's looked good. He finally, gets a goal line catch in this one, or goal line carry in this one. He gets some work in the passing game. He looked awesome.
The Italians, we get agita, right? And, maybe you eat a little something weird. You have a little too much sauce, maybe a little too much pasta. The Seahawks backfield gives me agita, right? Ken Walker had done nothing. He hadn't scored double digits in a game since week 4. And Zach Charbonnet had been the better fantasy running back when we all know that Walker is the better real running back. And so, of course, because fantasy football, Walker plays 43 snaps, 19 touches. He has 111 total yards and touchdown, and his best game of the year against the toughest defense he's faced when it comes to giving up points to running backs. The Rams had been brutal against running backs. So why not? Ken Walker goes off against them, right? And then in this game, Shaq Charbonnet has 6.7 points. He still saw 13 touches, and he still played 36 snaps, which was 7 fewer than Walker. But, it's a guessing game every week. Like, we thought we had it figured out because, again, Walker had not scored double digits since week 4, Marcus. So then I think, all right, well, Zach Charbonnet is, the better fantasy back because of the situation he's being put into. And then yesterday against the Rams, that was not the case. Now, hopefully moving forward, they continue to utilize Walker as the true 1 and Charbonnet as a 2, but I don't trust that that's going to be the case. We're going to find out. But I know I benched Ken Walker in one league, and I was, again, agita yesterday because the matchup was very bad, and he had been very bad. And unfortunately, or fortunately for those who started him, he turned it around yesterday.
All right, let's talk about Sean Tucker, maybe the most surprising fantasy performance from week 11. 140 yards, 3 touchdowns against this Bills defense that can be really good some weeks and then pretty awful other weeks.
Dude, he averaged 5.6 yards per carry. He looked good. And, Rachaad White actually wasn't terrible when he got the ball. He averaged over 5 yards a carry as well, but he only had 12 touches. So moving forward now, I don't know when Bucky Irving's coming. I didn't expect him to be out this long, to be quite honest with you. So I don't know when Bucky's coming back. But right now, Sean Tucker's redraft percentage of ownership should be the same or higher than Rachaad White, and that's not the case right now. And in Dynasty, it's the same thing. You've got to be starting Sean Tucker if you're starting a Bucs running back, again, until we get Bucky Irving back. And I hope he comes back sooner rather than later because he's hurt a lot of fantasy managers this season. But Tucker was fantastic. And it's also proof that, Buffalo's defense is not great against running backs. And I've talked about how they've played against some really good running backs. Sean Tucker is a good running back, but he's not elite by any stretch of the imagination. And for him to go out there and put up a number like that, that was a fun game. That was the best fantasy game of the day. There was just, 76 combined points in that one?
Yeah, let's talk about a game that wasn't very much fun. That's Lions-Eagles on Sunday Night Football. Now, Jameson Williams did score a touchdown. He had a decent fantasy day. Is he someone that you're starting to buy a little bit now that Dan Campbell is calling the plays in Detroit?
Well, not only that, but Sam Laporta is now out for at least 3 more games because he's on injured reserve. And you remember, I told people, go and get JMO. I feel like it's time for him to bust out. He had almost 20 points last night, and that was a terrible game. He had far more points than Amon-Ra St. Brown, which doesn't typically happen. He's seen at least 6 targets and scored at least 16.6 points in 3 straight games. And with no Laporta, that's more targets to go around. They ain't throwing on the Brock Wright. I can tell you that right now. There's no doubt about that. So now the window to buy low on Jameson Williams is over. And now is the time, if you have him, to just, plug him into your lineup every single week.
I wouldn't be surprised if you can still buy low on Williams, because I think a lot of people who watched that game last night might feel like this Lions offense can be a little bit more up and down than we're used to seeing in previous years. And the Lions have some really tough games coming up, including a game against Green Bay on Thanksgiving. This Lions offense, I just don't feel great about. I don't feel the same way that I used to feel about it. It feels like they're lacking something.
Well, I would say this in the defense of the Lions offense, teams don't go into Philadelphia and produce. I mean, I talked about this last week. I said, I love Goff this week coming up. Philadelphia's defense at home, only one quarterback had really had a good game against them, and that was Jackson Dart, and he had almost 8 points as a runner. You're not going to get that from Goff. So, you know what? I get it. The Eagles defense is really tough at the link. So I'm going to kind of forgive and forget, move forward, play the matchups with Goff, obviously, but I'm still starting my Lions. Jahmyr Gibbs had a big game as a receiver last night. You're still starting Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think Jameson maybe is not a must start, but he's getting there. And obviously Laporta out. You're not going to start anybody else, but I'm gonna give the Lions a pass on this one.
Let's talk about some losers coming out of Week 11, and we've got to talk about Caleb Williams, whose team continues to win, but he's just not putting up the fantasy stats. Will that change? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to start saying yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. I said yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. And Mint makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your same phone and your number with all of your contacts. The setup is super easy. You keep your number, you're off and running in just minutes. Are you ready to start saying yes to saying no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That is mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Upfront payment of $45 required. Limited time new customer offer only for the first 3 months. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on the unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We'd also like to thank you for making us your number one sports podcast network. Fab, let's talk about some losers coming out of Week 11. I want to start with Caleb Williams because his team is winning these games. He's making some unbelievable plays with his legs. He's getting out of some of these sacks. He's playing good football, but it's just not translating to fantasy points.
He's been so unreliable. And again, this is the topic for me, inconsistency, right? We were hoping that Caleb Williams would end up being a top 10 quarterback this season. He's not been consistent though. Last week, huge game, great game, right? From a fantasy standpoint. This week, 50% completion percentage. That's terrible, dude. And he had just over 10 fantasy points. He's failed to score more than 11.8 points in 3 of his last 5 games. And so Caleb hasn't kind of become what we wanted to have, just set it, forget it. That's it. Caleb Williams is my starting quarterback. I ain't got to worry about it anymore. It hasn't happened this year. Now he's had some very good games. He's had some bad games. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is just who he is, Marcus. The Bears are winning games. They're running the ball successfully. And there's going to be games where Williams pops, and there's going to be games where he flops. And this, unfortunately, was a game where he ended up flopping, and he hurt a lot of fantasy managers in the whole passing game. I mean, I think Cole Kmet was their best receiver in this game, and nobody started Cole Kmet, and he wasn't even that great. Roma Dunze didn't have a good game. DJ Moore was invisible. Colson Loveland did nothing. Unfortunately, this is what the Bears are going to be. You're going to have pop weeks with this team, and then they're going to have weeks where you're left scratching your head.
You know what it reminds me of? It honestly reminds me a lot of what we've seen from Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs over the last 2 years, where you watch the games and Mahomes is doing some unbelievable things to avoid sacks and to run and pick up first downs, and they're winning some of these low-scoring games. And it's fun to watch, but it doesn't help your fantasy team.
Exactly.
Patrick Mahomes over the last 3 years is averaging 7 yards an attempt. That's right about where Caleb Williams is at. You're not getting the volume to make up for the lack of efficiency. You're not getting the dump off touchdowns inside the 5-yard line because the Bears are one of the run heaviest teams in the red zone. And that's just kind of where we are. I do think Caleb's progressing as a quarterback, but not as a fantasy quarterback.
And why would the Bears change anything? They're in first place. They're in first place. They're in a division with the Detroit Lions.
Detroit Tigers.
What? All of a sudden, baseball popped into my mind. The Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers and the Vikings. And the Vikings, we're going to talk about them. Oh, Marcus, it's over. It's over in Minnesota. But they're in first place. So why would they change a thing that they're doing? This is going to be what Caleb is.
Let's talk about some other losers from week 11. Let's get to some running backs. Two rookie guys, RJ Harvey, Ja'Cory Crosby, Merritt. I'll start with Merritt because he was a guy that was really popular early in the season. Was one of the guys that we spent several shows talking about. It's been pretty rough the last month.
Yeah, Bill's done. It's over. It was fun while it lasted, and it didn't last very long. He only played 18 snaps. He had 10 touches. He scored 4.3 fantasy points. Chris Rodriguez looks like the guy to have now in that backfield. I mean, he could be floating around out there in some dynasty leagues, but he's definitely out there in the redrafts. 16 touches, 85 total yards, averaged over 5 yards a carry. Now, the Commanders are off next week, so you can't use Rodriguez, obviously. But clearly, he's the dude that you want. And Bill has not scored more than 5.8 points since week 5. He had that one big game against the Chargers when we all thought, all right, here we go. Crosby, Merritt, let's get going here. It's going to be great from here on in. And it has been terrible. In fact, my guess is that the Commanders will probably be looking for a new running back starting in the offseason, potentially as a free agent or through the draft, because Crosby, Merritt, I don't know, is long for a prominent role in Washington's offense because he's already lost that prominent role.
And this is the thing that's a little scary when you're talking about like late round picks, like 6th, 7th round picks. The leash is generally really short for these guys. And it's not like Crosby Merritt's a 20-year-old running back who's still, trending upward. I mean, he was older coming out. I think he's 24, 25 already. I think there's a chance in 2026 that he's somebody that can be part of a committee. But if you're thinking he's going to be like the lead guy, I think Washington's telling you they don't think he can be.
Yep. And Rodriguez is now, started a couple of games in a row, and he just looks like the better back.
Yep.
And it's a bad team. It's amazing that the Commanders were in the NFC Championship game last year, and now they have 3 wins, and they are not going to the playoffs. That's just the NFL.
No. All right, let's talk about RJ Harvey, because we thought with J.K. Dobbins, and we should give an update here. He has I believe it's a Liz Frank injury. He had to have surgery on. He's out for the year. They said maybe if the Broncos make the Super Bowl. I doubt it. So no more J.K. Dobbins. This is RJ Harvey's backfield for the remainder of the season. This was a tough outing. Are you scared off from Harvey moving forward?
I mean, I don't like what I saw. It is the Chiefs, though. Their defense is really good. Harvey at least played 38 snaps, but I mean, he averaged 2.7 yards per carry, and he had just 8 points on 14 touches. And Jaleel McLaughlin had 7 touches and scored a touchdown. Yeah. So, is Harvey going to be the lead guy in a committee? Are they going to utilize McLaughlin? It looks like maybe that's going to be the case. But here's the thing that sneaks into my pessimistic mind is that they signed J.K. Dobbins for a reason. J.K. Dobbins was the lead back for the entire time that he was a Bronco before he got hurt. And maybe that's because they know that Harvey isn't that dude. Maybe just not right now. I don't know.
Right.
And then you come out and you see a performance like that when he's got an opportunity to really pop and show people, hey, look at this is, this is what I can do. And this is the player that I am. And again, it's only one game and it's against the Chiefs. And so, I'm not going to kill him too much, but that does leave a little bit of doubt in the back of my mind. And I've said this in the past on this pod, the Broncos, maybe it's not going to be J.K. Dobbins, but they're going to bring somebody in next year who's going to compete with RJ Harvey for the starting job. And again, if they thought that he was the guy, they would have utilized him more and not brought in a J.K. Dobbins and put him ahead of him on the depth chart almost immediately.
2 receivers really quickly. Ricky Pearsall, Courtland Sutton. Pearsall just came back from injury, so I do want to give him a little bit of slack here. Just 1 target. But Sutton's been a guy that we've been mentioning for a while now who's been losing work to Troy Franklin. I just don't think it's going to happen for Sutton anymore. It feels like we've kind of reached the point where we've seen the top of his value, and now we're just on a downward trend.
And it's amazing because he fell off a cliff early in the season. Marcus, he was doing really well.
Yeah.
He was the guy you were starting every single week, and he did lead the Broncos wide receivers in snaps and routes run, and he was targeted 8 times, but he only had 4 catches, 59 yards. He got outscored not only by Troy Franklin again, but Pat Bryant had a better game. Sutton's now failed to score more than 10.7 points in 4 straight games. And Franklin at the same time, 12 plus in 4 of his last 5. So as someone who does rankings every week, I've even got to question myself. Why am I putting Sutton ahead of Troy Franklin anymore? I mean, it's got to be flipped at this point. And in Dynasty, you're feeling real good if you got Troy Franklin. And if you've got Sutton, you're thinking, can I start this guy anymore?
Do you think Franklin's somebody that we can feel comfortable starting as like a flex every single week moving forward?
No, I don't. Just because Sutton is there, because they've got Bryant there. He got a little bit dinged up yesterday, but
He did. Yeah.
I don't know that I feel comfortable. I still feel like he's a guy that I'm playing the matchups with, and that's the same thing with Sutton at this point.
All right, let's talk about some stats from week 11 that are just driving Fabs crazy. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's not a better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score the next bucket to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late game push. I love that we have football on Sundays and Mondays, and then all week long, we've got NBA games to bet on. I love making some of the money line parlays. You can do that over on FanDuel. And get this, right now, FanDuel is offering new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Podcast. 2 shows every single day. 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Fabs, let's talk about some things that drove you nuts from week 11. And I want to start with the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they looked.
You were right. You were right, dude. I mean, listen, we're not worthy. We're not. You were down on the Chargers without Joe Alt. I was thinking, yeah, I still can play him. That game yesterday was maybe the biggest what the hell is going on game of the entire weekend, and there was a few of them. Justin Herbert scored 3.3 points. No Charger had more than 9.3 points. Arane Gatson had 6 points. Ladd McConkey had 4 points. Kamani Vidal had 3 points, got hurt. Quentin Johnson didn't have a point. The Jaguars came into this game as one of the most vulnerable teams in the league when it came to defending perimeter receivers. They had been giving it up. I think they allowed the second most points per game in the perimeter. The Jaguars defense is not this like great defense. And the Chargers went in there and just absolutely laid an egg. And any Charger that you played killed you, including Herbert, who was a guy that I loved going into this game because the matchup said start Justin Herbert. Now Herbert's had 2 bad games in a row, and Marcus is going to tell you why this is maybe going to be something that continues.
Yeah, I mean, they can't block. The pressure rate yesterday, I think it was like 42% of the dropbacks Justin Herbert was pressured. I mean, that's just, he's not going to make it through the season. And we saw it in this game. Like, there was a point in the third quarter where they were very seriously considering pulling Herbert for Trey Lance because they could not protect him. I think my concern is, Fabs, is that you have one more game that you can feel comfortable starting your stars in LA. And that's against the Cowboys on December 21st in Dallas. Listen to the rest of the schedule. The Raiders, okay, whatever. They've got Max Crosby. They match up well. Then it's the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Texans, the Broncos. All of those teams can rush the passer. This is an offense that you want to stay as far away from, even when Omarion Hampton comes back. I know Ladd McConkey is Ladd McConkey. Quentin Johnson's had a breakout season. You can't feel comfortable starting any of these guys with their current offensive line.
He makes some great points, and the defensive matchups are brutal outside of, again, Dallas and Las Vegas. So, and Herbert has been better than he's been bad this year. I mean, he's typically been putting up good numbers, but it looks like everything is sort of, happening. It's been like the perfect storm of suddenly the Chargers potentially falling off a cliff here from a fantasy perspective.
Let's talk about some Ole Miss receivers. How about DK Metcalf and AJ Brown? Kind of just more of the same here.
And I liked DK Metcalf coming into the season, and he averaged right around 16 points per game in his first 5 games. So I felt real good about him. guys, I mean, he's failed to score more than 9.9 points in 3 straight games in 4 of his last 5. He's averaged 8.7 points in that time. And now Aaron Rodgers is hurt. He injured his wrist. He didn't come back. I mean,
hold on. Rudolph, is that a good thing or a bad thing for Metcalf?
Mason Rudolph, bro. It's Mason Rudolph. I mean, come on.
I will say this. I was watching the game with Steeler fans yesterday, and as somebody who actively roots against the Steelers every single week, Mason Rudolph is a better quarterback than what Aaron Rodgers is now.
I don't know if I'm going there.
Well, it's just that he'll stand in the pocket and throw the ball. Rodgers has gotten to the point of the season where he does not want to get hit. You can't throw the ball to your outside receivers if you don't want to get hit.
Well, it was bad. I mean, there was a lot of bad in that Pittsburgh game too. Jalen Warren got hurt, and all the points that we thought were going to go to Warren went to Ken Gainwell. But it's just things are not good in Pittsburgh. And you know what drove me nuts too was that, like, legit, so many people started Pat Freiermuth or Jonnu Smith because the matchup was so good against Cincinnati. Who ends up having the best game? Darnell Washington. It just drove me absolutely out of my mind. Freiermuth had, I think, 1 catch. Jonnu did nothing against a bad Bengals defense. That was a very frustrating game all the way around from a fantasy standpoint. And then you want to talk about A.J. Brown. He had a lot of targets, but I think I'm more frustrated with Jalen Hurts. The last 2 games, he's done nothing. I mean, it's been bad. I don't know what's going on in Philadelphia. They keep winning, so what the hell? But, I mean, like, that passing game is not good at all. And it makes it really hard to start an A.J. Brown, especially when he's telling you not to even want him on your fantasy team, or a Devontae Smith, or suddenly a Dallas Goedert who's, not been good over the last couple of weeks. So, that's very frustrating.
Last thing before we go. I know you want to rant about J.J. McCarthy, so I'm going to give you 2 minutes to go ahead and do it. Why don't you go ahead. I'm just going to put myself on mute.
I want to hear you. No, I want to hear you say it.
This was the worst I think I've ever seen McCarthy play, to the point where I honestly wondered if they were going to consider putting Max Brosmer in the game. And, like, yes, it's nice to have that late game drive where you score the touchdown and you see the tools, and he's better than this player. So don't kill me here, but it felt a little Tim Tebow like, where you put together, let me give you better comp. It felt a little Kenny Pickett like. You remember that year that Kenny Pickett, I think it was Kenny Pickett's rookie year, where he would be really good at putting together one good drive late in the game, and Pittsburgh would win these 17-16 games. That's fun for a while, but it's not sustainable. And one of the things that you're seeing now is Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, their numbers aren't great, and they're getting incredibly frustrated. That's just a bad spot to be.
That's an understatement. Number one, Justin Jefferson, he's like this close to blowing his stack.
Yeah.
And, if you watched him on the sidelines yesterday, he was ready to lose his what.
And honestly, I thought it showed a lot of maturity. Like, he wanted to throw his helmet a couple times. Yeah. He's clearly frustrated. He's doing everything he can.
Because J.J. McCarthy's not a good quarterback in the NFL. He's not going to be. He completed 16 passes. He hasn't completed more than 20 passes in any of his 5 starts this year. Justin Jefferson's averaging 12.3 points per game in games that started by J.J. McCarthy. 12.3 points. This is Justin Jefferson. He averaged almost 19 last year with Sam Darnold. And I tell you one thing, going into last year, I was like, Sam Darnold, I don't know about all that. And then McCarthy goes down and like, oh, maybe we got a little sleeper on our hands. Addison, 8.3 points per game with McCarthy. He had been averaging 15 with Carson Wentz. TJ Hawkinson, 5.1 points per game with JJ McCarthy. The Vikings are in big trouble. They're not making the playoffs, and they have a quarterback problem. And they put themselves in this situation by bringing in McCarthy, drafting him 10th overall, and not keeping Sam Darnold. If Sam Darnold's the quarterback of this team, and I can't believe I'm saying this because Darnold has done a complete 180 in his career over the last year and a half. If Sam Darnold's the quarterback of this team, the Vikings are competing for the NFC battle, the crown. They're battling for the NFC. Now with J.J. McCarthy, they are toast. It's over. They need to find another quarterback. And any kind of aspirations of J.J. McCarthy being a very good fantasy quarterback, to me, have already gone out the window. He's a deer in the headlights.
What if they would have just kept Daniel Jones, who was on the roster in the second half of last year?
Exactly. Yeah. So, folks, and again, I have been trying to trade Justin Jefferson for like weeks. I got nothing. Like literally like, all right, give me that bag of rocks and you can have Justin Jefferson. And Jordan Addison, it's worse. It's worse. People would rather have the bag of rocks than Jordan Addison. And TJ Hawkinson is getting cut in redrafts. He's getting cut and you can't play him. There's no Viking right now. Name me one Viking that you could start with confidence. Crickets. Nobody. And why? J. McCarthy. God bless the kid. I bet you he's a wonderful human being. He is not a good pro quarterback. I didn't love the move when the Vikings did it, and he's destroying every player's fantasy value in that offense.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Check out the channel on YouTube, download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Fabs on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy Monday Night Football. We'll see you right back here on Tuesday.